I would just tell you, I'm setting up my home office, but at school.
I'm ready to be attacked by
That's
you.
It would be a pleasure to be attacked by Lilly. This is probably.
Oh, you can tell me how to do that.
Okay, cool. I forgot how to flow.
Great.
I just wanted to share with all of you.
Uh-oh.
Hey, can we scoot over? That's right.
Oh,
Okay, you want personal space?
No, I want to not be like right awkwardly behind the speaker.
Well, you're just gonna have to be awkward. I know, right?
Right, say the more awkward one.
I was about to say that was mean, but then I realized you were right.
Oh, what's this pen?
It's penalicious.
I'm high-tech seeing Micah.
Ooh.
This is nice.
Ooh, isn't the mic short for my color, or?
Yeah.
I
Well,
guess
it's got a dorky as heck gem at the top. I know.
plus
Not
10
sure how I
head
feel
points
about
for
that.
Grace.
What?
Plus 10
Alright.
head points.
You guys should flow.
Yep.
I have the most pen
Kind of do. But I can also get them for winning our cool speed quizzes. So,
What?
that was a speed quiz just now. I think the sparkly thing is cute. How come you're okay with sparkly things here but not on our shirt?
I'm just saying we could get excessive glitter on shirts. I think it'll
No
look
such
tacky
thing, Lily.
and nasty.
What if we made you a shirt then, Lily? By hand, and we custom added each fleck of glitter.
That would be a
Fleck.
lot of work. Are you guys ready?
Drawing
1
lines.
minute. Okay.
I thought the lines are lines
Is
that
this
we
like-
draw.
Oh, okay. I thought those were
My
like
ears are
headphones.
really
Oh
long.
my god, got the headphones.
That means I'm talking about you.
That's my hair again, but I shouldn't even be wearing it. I'm wearing this beanie.
I
like the beanie. It's so cozy.
Follow me.
As the leader of the affirmative team, I strongly affirm today's resolution that the USFG should end NAFTA. As a brief roadmap, I'm first going to be going over the framework, then addressing the affirmative team's case. All right. So NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement. That's the only definition that we really need for this round. Moving on to framework. So the actor is going to be the U.S. federal government. Time frame as soon as possible. Funding through normal ways and means. And our plan text is that we're going to be reinstating the previous tariffs on manufactured goods, but not tariffs on agriculture. And the criterion for today is net benefits. Alright. Moving on to the affirmative case. Alright. Yes?
First of all, how exactly is that ending NAFTA if you're not ending all of the different things that NAFTA put into place? And second of all, are you actually going to be talking to either of the countries involved with NAFTA, or are you just going to be doing it unilaterally?
Okay. First of all, so NAFTA essentially was essentially like eliminating tariffs on these goods that were going between these three countries. So what we're going to do is we're going to be reinstating those tariffs on manufactured goods but not agriculture. So that's essentially going to be ending NAFTA. I'll take your question later by the time. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to address the first contention, which is that NAFTA promotes maquiladoras. All right. So in 1994, after 1994, when NAFTA was instated, maquiladora plants grew. The number of maquiladora plants increased. So during the 5 years before NAFTA, they were growing at a rate of 37%. But after NAFTA was put in the next 5 years, they grew at an 89% rate, according to the Center for Economic and Policy Research. I'm sorry, I'll take your question later by the time. Okay, so maquiladoras are manufacturing. Wait, what is this? Operating plants?
Yeah.
Manufacturing operating plants in Mexico. On the border of Mexico. And so the materials and equipment are imported for assembly, processing, and manufacturing, and then they're exported back to the U.S. All right, so here are some reasons why maquiladoras are bad. So 1, terrible working conditions. 2, it's mostly young women who are working and the workers are mostly young women, and they've been separated from their families at a really young age, and they don't have to be of legal age. That means that they're not necessarily 18. So in these maquiladoras, there's sexual abuse, there's physical abuse, and there are illegal working hours and unfair pay, which in U.S. dollars is about $4 per day, according to UC Davis. Also, the environment, these maquiladoras don't always follow disposal laws for hazardous waste, toxic chemicals, and these are generally used unsafely. And so the U.S.'s participation in NAFTA is promoting the abuse of more than 1.3 million men, women, and children who work in these maquiladoras. So essentially, what NAFTA is doing is promoting terrible working conditions and abuse for these Mexican workers. Yes?
How exactly is the United States promoting this through its free trade agreements and NAFTA?
Right, so the U.S. by participating in trade with these countries, by participating in NAFTA, what we see is that I'm sorry, I'll take your question later if I have time. But by participating in NAFTA, one effect of NAFTA is that we've been sending jobs to Mexico, and what happens is that there's really no protection for these workers who take these jobs in Mexico. So that means that there's a really easy route to all the horrible working conditions that I've mentioned before, physical and sexual abuse being some of those conditions. Okay. I'm just going to move on to the second contention, which is of the economy in general. All right. So after NAFTA, one result of NAFTA has been that our U.S. trade deficit with our NAFTA partners, Mexico and Canada, has actually increased to $181 billion. And in addition, the U.S. has lost more than 1 million jobs. And what's happening to those jobs is that they're being outsourced to Mexico. Now, in the U.S., if you don't have these, if you've lost your job, you can go get another job, and you'll be able to have good working conditions. You won't have unfair hours. You won't face these conditions of abuse that workers in Mexico will. But the problem is, because of NAFTA, because these jobs are being outsourced to Mexico, we see that it's much easier for those workers to be abused. Okay, so U.S. workers without college degrees, which make up 63% of our workforce, have actually lost a net amount equal to 12.2% of their wages. That is a major part of their wages. And in addition, as I've just mentioned, we're promoting unfair working conditions for those workers in Mexico. Okay, so despite the promises that NAFTA would actually bring Mexico prosperity, more than half of the Mexican population, and in rural areas, more than 60% of the Mexican population is still below the poverty line. And NAFTA also promised that they would help make imported products cheaper for Mexicans. However, the cost of consumer goods in Mexico is actually 7 times the level of pre-NAFTA prices. So what we can see is that consumer spending is going down, poverty is increasing, and then the quality of life is also going down. So not only have people in America lost jobs, do we see effects in America, but we also see effects in Mexico. We see that they can't afford basic goods. They can't. There's still a lot of them below the poverty line, despite the promises that NAFTA has made. And in addition, once again, NAFTA is actually promoting bad working conditions for those workers in Mexico. Okay, so for these reasons, I strongly affirm today's resolution that the U.S. actually should end NAFTA.
Do something wrong? What did I do? I don't understand. I don't really think that's face. Alright, you guys ready? Is that a yes? Okay. Grace? Good? Everyone? Alright. Just as a brief roadmap, I'm going to be going over the affirmative framework, case, and the net case. Alright. Time begins now. I strongly negate today's resolution that the United States federal government should end NAFTA. First, to briefly go over their framework. In my opponent's plan text, they said that the United States would merely reinstate previous tariffs on manufacturing goods but not on agricultural goods, and not do anything else to talk to Mexico or Canada. When I asked, they did not respond to that question. So first of all, I'd like to point out that NAFTA has done a lot to actually decrease the tariffs that are on agricultural goods. If my opponents are not addressing agricultural goods whatsoever, they are not in fact ending NAFTA. If they are not ending NAFTA in its entirety, because the word end implies to end all of it, then they are not affirming today's resolution, and thus their entire case is not entirely topical because they're not addressing all the topic. In addition, the idea that the United States can just reinstate these tariffs without talking to either Mexico or Canada is extremely detrimental, because the United States is simply ignoring what these other countries think that are affected by these tariffs, affected by these laws, and just saying, they don't matter, we're going to do whatever the heck we want because it's our country and we're just going to do whatever. That simply promotes an ideal of Americentrism, where the United States believes it can do whatever it wants and not listen to anyone else. That is extremely detrimental because it breaks down trust between the two countries, because the other countries see that we don't really care enough to even talk to them about it first. We're just going to do it and ignore them entirely. This is extremely detrimental because we won't be able to work as well in the future on issues like trade, as well as on issues like communicating on fighting drug cartels in Mexico and moving into the United States, on immigration, none of this. We won't be able to communicate because we've broken down this trust. Now to move into the affirmative case. Their first point was about how it promotes these factories with very bad working conditions. First of all, my opponents gave us no reason to believe this is because of NAFTA. Okay, yes, there are bad working conditions, but in the same time frame as NAFTA has been in place, there have been a lot of other factors as well that have affected this situation. Things like the growth of container ships worldwide, the lowering cost of communications allowing more globalization, and the rise in global industry. This means these things were happening anyways. It is not because of NAFTA that these things are occurring. In addition, my opponents say, oh, we're supporting it by trading with them. Okay, so are we just going to stop trading with Mexico? That simply doesn't make sense. It's worse for them to have nothing than to have what they have right now. Like, okay, you don't want to be in a situation where you're being abused, you don't have enough pay. But most of these people, before this happened, they didn't have any job at all. Thus, having a job, being able to at least buy some food for your family, at least get some of your kids some education, is better than nothing. We're making their situation better, not worse. And thus, we can't just end NAFTA and leave them in these factories still with bad working conditions, because ending NAFTA doesn't solve that, and now there's nowhere for them to sell their goods to easily either. So all we're doing them is leaving them in these places of sexual abuse and yet giving them no potential benefits in the long run. So overall, we're just hurting these people even more. Death is not a better alternative. Thus, clearly, they're not actually helping these people. They're not going to change anything about the situation. Their second point was talking about how it hurts the economy, talking about a loss of jobs, loss of trade, etc. However, what they seem to fail to realize is that the United States manufacturing sector is going down anyways. It's not because of NAFTA that our jobs are just magically being lost to Mexico. These jobs were already leaving the United States because the United States is transferring from what was previously a manufacturing-based country to an economy that is more services-based, no longer based on this manufacturing. So according to Council on Foreign Relations, this isn't actually because of NAFTA. These jobs were going to be leaving the United States anyways. That's just how our economy is now. In addition, they're bringing up again how these awful working conditions. Again, some job is better than no job. Even if they're not amazing, they are being able to make some money for their families, some money to help improve their standard of living. In addition, they were talking about how there are many people without college degrees in the United States who don't have jobs, whose wages are going down. However, the fact of the matter is, with these free trade agreements, they're able to get cheaper goods because we're trading more with Mexico and Canada without these tariffs on them. That means because of that, their money, even if they don't have very much, goes much farther. So they're able to buy more now than they're able to before. In addition, they talked about how many people in Mexico are still poor. Cost of consumer goods is going up. This may be true, however, the definition of poor has fundamentally changed. Right now, the standard of living for people who are considered poor in Mexico has already gone up a lot. The standard of living now includes far more consumer goods, such as electronics, better food, things that previously were considered luxury goods. So while they may still be poor, they are doing a lot better with NAFTA than they ever were before, and thus this is clearly a net benefit overall. Now to move on to the negation case. Our first point is that ending NAFTA would jeopardize our biggest export market. Since 1994, when NAFTA was put into place, exports from the United States have in fact quadrupled because they are going to Canada and Mexico. The United States trades more to Canada and Mexico than it does to any other country across the entire world. Because these tariffs are lower, they're getting a lot more trade into Mexico and Canada, which is overall really good for the United States. If we were to end this, the United States would lose $127 billion every single year, according to Bloomberg. That is $127 billion less on a yearly basis that the United States doesn't have because we decided to end NAFTA. That is clearly not a good thing. So we see we have a lot to stand to lose in the status quo. But in addition, the United States also has a lot that they can continue to gain from the situation with NAFTA. Because Mexico, right now, has a lot more cheap, abundant, young workforce. That means overall Mexico has a lot of potential to grow, become a more important country in the future. Lots of these jobs that are going to Mexico in the status quo are part of the middle class. So not only would we be jeopardizing this export market, we'd also be jeopardizing their economy as a whole. So it's hurting both our economies. Their middle class is growing in the status quo with NAFTA, and without that, this middle class disappears. That means less people who are able to get more education, get farther in life, and have more of a wealth gap in Mexico, which leads to wages stagnating, the economy as a whole not doing as well, which is clearly a bad thing. Our second point is talking about how by doing this, we'd be caving to prejudice. According to The Economist in January of 2014, the main argument behind this is that we don't want to trade with so-called dirty Mexicans. We say they're bringing in drugs, rape, crime, immigration. Basically what Donald Trump is saying by arguing that we should build a wall between here and Mexico. By giving into that, we are saying that those ideas are okay, that those ideas are true. Thus, through the idea of reinforcement theory, by allowing to go along with these ideas, we're acknowledging that, yeah, they do steal our jobs. So we lead to more of this sentiment in the future, more people trying to build a wall between Mexico and Canada. Hate crime against Mexican Americans going up. It has already increased by 3 times in just 1 year. We don't want to continue this trend, and thus clearly we must not end NAFTA for all of the above reasons. Thank you.
Special message.
I don't want to do this. No, I don't. Lily, I don't.
All my arguments are refuted.
No, I don't know how.
So break it down what you're gonna say. Like sometimes you can group her arguments into her main argument here is that we're transitioning to a service economy. What you could say is that but there's no reason why we can't still keep manufacturing jobs in the United States, especially since manufacturing jobs pay significantly more than service jobs, and so we should, as much as possible, fight to keep manufacturing jobs. Second. No worries, there's no pressure. It's okay. You're okay, darling. Take a moment. You're great. Don't worry about it. Yeah. You want Daeny to do this part, and then you can just do the voting speech?
I don't know how.
Go back to what Daeny was saying. I want to talk about the bad representation.
But you already know that.
Yeah, you can talk about Daeny mentioned all the stuff about people being raped and exploited, and no job literally would be better than being raped and exploited. right? And so you could talk about, like, there could be other types of things that would grow in Mexico without NAFTA. And actually, all that's happened is that we're not even seeing that many manufacturing jobs staying in Mexico anyway, because those are going to, like, China, etc. And so it's actually not even really helping people in Mexico. It's mostly only helping the people in the United States to get cheaper and cheaper goods without really helping the people in Mexico.
You can talk about how, like, since we have these jobs that are terrible, there's no opening really for better jobs because
Correct.
we're just stuck in the status quo.
Because we're focusing so much on. Well, okay, so back to that. So that's the need. So it's looking at that situation. Look at like labor. So what if we said that having some job is better than no job, but without NAFTA, with some job that would exist would be much better. Because see, one thing that NAFTA is doing is focusing on trade. So one thing with trade is make products and you send them out. Without NAFTA, the manufacturing would be small, yeah, but I think the jobs that aren't manufacturing means there would be exploitative factories and other industries that can take care of the workers who don't.
I don't understand this.
There you go. No, you're fine. You're fine. You just take a little break, get some water, walk it off a little bit, then we can come back and we can talk about it. Yeah, you don't have to. We're just going to talk about it, and maybe we can help you understand. Yeah. Okay. Let's go get you some water. All right. Let me get you some water. It's okay. It's okay. We've all had bad days, my friend. No, you're fine.
There's only one Lily though, don't forget that. There's only one Lily. Lily hasn't mastered clothing technology yet. If she did, then I would be Lily right now, and you would be Lily so ridiculous.
Yeah, you guys are going to be debating on.
Lily will master clothing technology for another couple of years, okay?
Just a couple of years.
Come on, you're ready, you're doing really well. I know you feel really overwhelmed right now, but you're not going to feel better by beating yourself up about it. If we all talk about it right now, we all take a more relaxed thing, what's going to happen is you're going to learn this material and you're going to be better prepared for this weekend. So just focus on breathing.
It's a nice cold teacher water too. Special.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't stress yourself out, honey. That's sometimes you don't know. And remember, I can tell you one thing: the parents in the audience know like half as much as you do. Most of the time, they have,
Probably less.
if not less. Like they don't even know. They have no idea. So this is where we call the fake it till you make it part of the debate, where you just say like, actually everything she just said is wrong, and just start contradicting her, even if you don't have anything to back it up. That's the beauty of Parley. You don't have any cards. So for all they know, you're right. You can just say, actually, she's totally wrong. Blah, blah, blah. They don't know.
It's going to be a bunch of people who, like you, are like just parts. It's like the second year of debate, or maybe they're a freshman who thinks that they're really, really great and ready to jump right into varsity. Or maybe they're a really bitter senior who's only here to get put it on their college.
The Lily
app.
people are
I think
tiny
it's
as us, but think they're as great as Lily.
Yeah, most of the people who were like super good last year will graduate.
Except for Super Spencer.
I think
And Nadia himself.
I think
It's
that
only
Lily's drive you could arrange an unfortunate
Well,
accident.
Spencer's in our league still, but his partners are never as good as he is, though. Although last year he got undefeated. Remember, like at the one tournament, was it with you and Grace or with you and Meredith?
I don't remember.
One of the ones. It was like the last round.
Yeah.
It's like you're not even going to state
I know.
qual. Why?
Besides, even if it doesn't
qualify
qualify, it's I'm pretty sure you can get up and run out.
I was just
And
like,
it
can I
wouldn't
take
really
your
matter.
sleeves on for
And you could like go to McDonald's and eat nuggets. I
I
won't
think
eat
that's
nuggets
hard for people
unless
even
pepper
better.
because then I would feel bad.
Really not. I know we played football in middle school, and then like it's kind of like the being able to get qualified.
We will
It's
make
like
sure
the
there
big-
is
once
one
you qualify, you qualify automatically for nationals.
Oh,
And
nice.
I feel like we were in like our qualifying round and
Be fine, okay?
we were trying to
Yeah,
beat
I'm not really
these
sure.
people,
Even
and
if your
then
rounds
we
don't go well, you still know that
we don't have to be qualified, and people who are running, who are trying to compete, already were qualified. I don't know, and they're like two 7th graders against 4 8th graders, and we're just like,
You don't sit on the ground while we talk about this.
like we're just like all like, why, oh why, oh why, and then Ethan gets Parker, and they think they're good, but they're not, because Parker